What's up guys, welcome to this review of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, the 9th film, or technically the 10th film from Quentin Tarantino. Here we have Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. Leonardo DiCaprio is an actor whose career is waning a bit. It's towards the end of things, he needs to do something to reinvigorate it, and well, he's not too happy about that. Meanwhile, Brad Pitt's his stuntman, who's also kind of his best friend and buddy. And then in the background you got Sharon Tate, played by Margot Robbie, who's going about her business. She's just had a film released. And that's kind of it. What did I think of the film overall? I thought it was pretty darn good. It's one of my favourite Quentin Tarantino films, I think, but I've got unusual opinions about Quentin Tarantino films. The ones most people don't like, I like. The ones most people do like, I don't like. So, yeah, take that for whatever it's worth. But let's get into it. The story, there isn't much of a story. What I've just said there about them being an actor, that's kind of all there is to it. And yeah, you've got the Manson family murders and Sharon Tate stuff going on in the background, but it's not really about that. And trying to define what it's about is tough, because this is very much a slice of life kind of tale. It's a fantasy reimagining of history that's not historical at all. It's not historically accurate at all, I should say. There are some things where he is sticking to reality. There are some things where he's drawn in from real people and films and events, but this is very much a what-if situation, and that will, of course, determine what you think of this film overall. If you're wanting something to be accurate, if you're wanting something to be almost educational, this is not the film for you. But the best way to describe this film is that it's all about showing you what the lifestyle and experience of being in Hollywood in 1969 was like. And I think it nails that part of it. The whole look of it, the feel of it, the tone and mood is brilliant. It's totally what I would imagine being in Hollywood in 1969 was like. So despite the fact that there's not really much of a story and that it's 2 hours 45 minutes long approximately, it's never boring. It's pretty well paced. I was constantly engaged and entertained by this film. And that's mainly because it's got the really interesting characters and it's got that key Quentin Tarantino dialogue. And because of that Tarantino dialogue, there's a lot of comedy in there. Some of it's a little borderline inappropriate, let's say. But it works really well. It is funny. And he's also going for some gravitas, some emotion in places here. It's one of his more emotional films, I would say. It feels like he's got something to say. It reminded me a little bit of Birdman and the way in which that deals with fame and attention and wanting to be like an artist. And it delves into that, but I don't think it ever reaches like a true emotional moment. So the most it ever gets is that it's tense at times, particularly when it's doing the Manson murder things, where he goes to their compound, and not going into spoilers just yet, but the end of the film is really tense, and he shifts the tone from being pretty cheerful and happy to being pretty emotional to being really tense and dark and ominous, I want to say. And he does it really well. It works out pretty darn good. And that's a pretty tough thing to achieve as well. So just to address the ending a little bit, the ending is brilliant. I think it builds up really well. Perhaps the pacing towards the ending amps up a bit too much, but the ending is surprising, it's shocking, it's well worth the wait, I would say. Even if it doesn't entirely tie into the whole Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt storyline that's been going on at that point. It does feel a little bit, let's say, random. But it works, and it's enjoyable, it's fun and entertaining, and I liked it a lot. So let's get into the characters. I've already touched on this a little bit, so I'll just brush through it a little bit. Leonardo DiCaprio, Brad Pitt are absolutely brilliant in this film. Leonardo DiCaprio is playing the actor whose days are numbered, perhaps. He's struggling to find the leading roles anymore. He's resorting to guest spots on TV, and he's just looking for that big moment. And one of the moments that I liked in this film is when he comes on set and he forgets his lines, and then next thing you know, he's in his trailer and he's frustrated, he's throwing things around, he's having a big fight and an argument with himself. And then next thing you know, he nails this scene and he's all of a sudden really emotional when someone says that's the best acting I've ever seen. And he just nails this character. It feels like this is a real person, and yeah, he might get an Academy Award nomination for this. As for Brad Pitt is playing possibly the coolest guy I've ever seen. All the way through the film, this is just one great, cool character who seems to be able to handle himself no matter what the situation is. He's the sort of guy you just want to hang around with, have a drink with, and yeah, there's not a lot to that character beyond that. There is a little backstory thing that's hinted at, but beyond that, the character is just basically like this film's version of the Fonz, essentially. And yeah, he does a great job of doing that. The Manson family, we only see them a few times throughout the whole film. They're not the focus of the film. Same with Sharon Tate, she is not the focus of this film. But when we do see the Manson family, they're suitably creepy and eerie and weird, and that helps build the tension during their scenes. And towards the end, again, not going into spoilers, Quentin Tarantino does a brilliant job of making these hateful, horrible people. So I'm going to touch on spoilers later on, but this works out really well for the film. There's a huge name of actors in this as well. You've got Kurt Russell, Damian Lewis, you've even got Maya Hawke in there. So a lot of big names, a lot of familiar faces popping up in like glorified cameos, essentially. Kurt Russell plays this film producer guy, I believe he is, but he's also the narrator for some reason. It's never really explained why he's the narrator for like 2 scenes, but hey, that's what it is. I like Kurt Russell anyway. But these are glorified cameos. They all do a good job. There's nothing wrong with their acting. Damian Lewis shows up as Steve McQueen for 1 scene, and he looks the part, he plays the part pretty well. So that adds a little bit of, oh, I recognise that person, I recognise that guy, and say, oh, he's playing that person. And yeah. Then there's the whole Bruce Lee thing, which is getting a lot of controversy, and I kind of get why it's getting the controversy, but here's the thing. Based on all the things I've studied in film and TV and interviews and research and everything, Bruce Lee, the depiction of him in this film is kind of what I expected of Bruce Lee. He's meant to be cocky and arrogant, and that's exactly how he comes across in this film. So I get why people are upset by that, but I kind of think it's accurate. So yeah. But in terms of the characters, the big problem is the depiction of women. This is a really big problem for the film. The women are inside supporting roles only. They're glorified. There's about half the film is just shots of women's feet. We all know about this Quentin Tarantino foot fetish thing, but here he's going way too over the top, and feels like every other shot is just a shot of a woman putting her feet right up to the camera. And then there's other shots of skimpy outfits where they're bending over, their backside's right in front of the camera, and the actual action's going on in the background. And yeah, it feels like he's over-sexualizing them. He's really using the male gaze a lot. So this is a problem for 2019 in films. Surely we've come beyond that now. But yeah, all the women in this film, even Margot Robbie as Sharon Tate, they're glorified, they're sexualized, and there's not much more to them than that. Although the Manson family, I wouldn't say they're sexualized quite so much as they are almost like fetishized. But let's get into the production. The mood and tone I've touched on, that's really well done. Really impressive how he's balanced that out. Good comedy in there. The pacing's good. It never slows down. It's never boring, despite the fact that it's 2 hours, 45 minutes long. The soundtrack is great, but then so is every Quentin Tarantino soundtrack. Good music, suitably, it sets the mood and the tone really well, and it establishes the time period well as well. The cinematography, the sets, the costumes are all brilliant. This is a really good looking film. I believe he's actually went and recreated the way Hollywood looked in 1969, because obviously it doesn't exist in that shape and form anymore. So it's impressive how they've got the look down to a T, and he's went to that length and distance just to nail the look, and it works really well. Was it necessary? Maybe not. Maybe he could have cut some of that stuff out. I don't know, but it works out well. It makes the film look good. There's a lot of stylish editing. There's a lot of jump cuts and flashbacks and jumping from one moment to another. Some of it's a little unnecessary. So, for example, there's a scene with Timothy Olyphant and Leonardo DiCaprio where Timothy walks in, they start a conversation, jump cut, they're halfway through the conversation, jump cut, they're towards the end of the conversation. And it's really jarring. It's the only time that it's really egregious and noticeable to that extent. And I don't really get why he was doing that. Maybe he's trying to symbolize that Leonardo DiCaprio's character is not quite paying attention. He's only tuning in and out of the conversation. I don't know. But yeah, there's a lot of these jump cuts around the film. Some of them don't always make sense, and this is one of the big examples. And one of the last things I want to praise is the use of aspect ratios. So there are some examples where he's gone in and created some of these fictional films that Leonardo DiCaprio starred in, and because of the time period, some of them are 4:3, some of them are more widescreen, and he does a really good job of adjusting the cinematography, the size of the picture, the black and white colours, the film grain. It really adds something to them and it makes it feel authentic. There's even a moment, this is a spoiler, but so I'm not going to go into specific. There's a moment where they've inserted Leonardo DiCaprio into a classic movie, one of my favourite movies of all time, in fact, and it looks really good. It looks genuine. So, yeah. There's also, they show images of Margot Robbie, Sharon Tate in a film, although it's not actually played by Margot Robbie, so it's unusual how they haven't done it for her, but they did it for Leo. So, yeah, that's odd. But I do like how they've recreated some of the old-fashioned style of filmmaking. And I'm not sure how much of it was done in the editing or how much was genuinely done using old cameras and films. I don't know. But it works really well. So that's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And I'm going to go into spoilers in just a little bit. I really like this film. The more I think about it, the more I like it. So that's saying something. And I do recommend it. There isn't much of a story there. It is very much a here's what living in that time period in that location was like. That's kind of what it is. It's a slice of life thing, focusing on the characters and what they're going through across these couple of days. So it's not going to be for everyone, but I liked it a lot. If you've liked this review, you can subscribe to my channel. That's really important to me. The more subscribers I get, the more content I can make, the better content I can make. And of course, share this across social media. Help me build my subscriber base. Let other people know about it. If you don't like this, someone else might. And if you did or didn't like this, leave that in the comments down below. Let me know what I can improve. Let me know what you thought of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. And of course, go over to Twitter and Instagram and follow me at @the_Grant Burton if you want. But that's it for now. If you haven't seen the film, perhaps walk away, come back, watch the rest of this because I'm going into full spoilers. So, the big thing about the spoilers is the ending. You might expect that the ending would be the big Sharon Tate Manson murders incident where Manson's cult followers went into Sharon Tate's house and brutally murdered her simply because she lived there. Well, that doesn't happen in this film. It's what I thought was going to happen, and I was really surprised and almost shocked that it didn't. Instead, what happens is they break into her neighbour's house, which is where Leonardo DiCaprio's character lives and where Brad Pitt's hanging out at the time. And the ending is brilliant. It's really, really good. It's over the top, it's action-packed, it's gory. Perhaps there's a whole thing about violence against women, that being a bit too much perhaps. But it's very funny, it's very entertaining. I like how they had Brad Pitt being high on drugs, which had you then doubting his ability to get through this incident. It's like, up until this point, he's been calm, cool, and collective, and here he is off his mind on drugs. You just think, oh, this is not going to end well for him. But then all of a sudden, he just dishes out a beating to all three of them, a brutal beating. I loved the moment where he's got someone's head and he's just bashing them against the counter. Then he's going off against the wall and he's going off against the fireplace. It's so over the top, so ridiculous, but it's hilarious as well. And then it ends with the big thing where Leonardo DiCaprio finally discovers what's going on, and then he just pulls out a flamethrower from one of his previous movies. And yeah, brilliant ending, love the ending. So that's probably the highlight of the film for me. And one of the reasons it works so well, I touched upon this earlier, is that the Manson cultists who went into the house, Quentin Tarantino does a brilliant job of making these hateful, unlikable characters. So when you see what happens to them in this final scene, it's like, yeah, they're getting their comeuppance. It's a feel-good moment, even though it's brutal, violent, and gory. But it's like, you kind of want to see that. So, yeah, that's why that works so well. And because it is avoiding the historical accuracy, because it is like a fantasy, like, what if this happened instead? it means that there's a surprise for people who were expecting the Sharon Tate murder to happen. Like, I myself was expecting that to happen. So when they burst into that house, I was like, oh, this didn't happen, this is odd, what's going to happen now? So yeah, I think that works out well for the viewers and their expectations. One of the things that I kind of liked about it is Brad Pitt's backstory. Again, I've touched on this a little bit, but it suggested that maybe he killed his wife in a boating accident. We don't know. And I like how it's just brought up and you see a bit, but you don't actually know if he killed his wife or not. Was it an accident? Did he do it on purpose? You're just kind of left to wonder that, and I like that a lot. I'm not going to say what I think happened, but I like the fact that Quentin Tarantino's just said, yeah, this happened, you can decide the specifics of it. It's pretty smart. And that's all I've got to say about Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. Again, not much of a story, so all the really things I can say is like, I like this scene, and so on and so on. So I can't really touch on the story, can't touch on the characters, except I will say Leonardo DiCaprio's character is the only character that ever really gets some sort of development throughout the film. At the beginning of the film and the end of the film, he's two different people really. And everyone else, though, kind of just the same all the way through. Not necessarily a bad thing, Leonardo is the main character after all, but yeah, I like this film a lot, and I recommend it. So, subscribe to my channel, yada yada yada, Twitter and Instagram, you know what to do. Thanks for watching.